Happy Thursday, everyone. I hope you guys are doing well. For those of you that are new, my name is Susan. I am a freelance fiction editor of Susan Barnes Editing, and I specialize in science fiction, fantasy, and romance. And today we're going to be talking about how to find your target audience. So whenever you're going to sell something, whether you've read business books or maybe it's for the company that you work for, they'll tell you that the key to selling is knowing your target audience and identifying your ideal customer. And they recommend you narrow down into excruciating detail. I'm talking about where they shop, what they wear, even down to if they're married or anything like that. And it's the same thing with book buying. You want to know as much as possible about your ideal customer, your ideal reader, book buyer, so that you can target your books, your marketing, your publicity, everything to them, regardless of whether you're self-published or traditionally published. This is really important. Most authors, when talking about ideal audiences, don't quite know what they're going to say, and they generally go too broad. I mean, that's the main thing, right? You want your book to appeal to everybody. That's the goal. You would love to have your book read by anyone and everyone. But the risk you run with doing that is if you stay too general, you may miss all audiences altogether if you're trying to appeal to too many people at once. So you want to make sure you're being specific. And I'm talking about even more specific than just saying, oh, I write fantasy, I want to appeal to fantasy readers. Or, oh, I write romance, I want to appeal to romance readers. Okay, but what kind of romance readers? What kind of fantasy readers? This question is vitally important because there are so many different types of fantasy, romance, sci-fi readers out there, and different tropes and subgenres that are going to appeal in different ways. So knowing who specifically you want to read your book, who you're trying to target, is very, very important. And this is good for, obviously, if you're self-publishing, then you can target your audience specifically with ads, knowing where to have reviews, knowing who to reach out to, but also with traditional publishing as well. The first step with any of that is obviously pitching to an agent or having your agent pitch to a book publisher. And the first question they're going to ask is, who's going to be reading this? And giving a specific answer as possible is painting a picture in their mind of who they're going to sell this to, which then they in turn need to tell their sales teams, so that then Barnes & Noble, Amazon, everybody like that has that picture in their mind that they know who's going to buy it, and that allows them to be able to estimate how many books they think you're going to sell. It's important on both sides of the track. So let's walk through the steps of how you can really narrow in on who your target audience is. First and foremost, if you've previously published books, you can certainly look at the reviews and at the people that have bought those books previously and find out more about them. But for the exercise of this video, we're going to assume you all are first time either querying an agent or first time publishing, and you're not quite know where to start. So the first thing you want to take a look at is your genre, subgenre, and tropes. So again, going back to my example before, you may be saying, all right, I wrote a fantasy story, so I'm going towards fantasy readers. A fantasy reader is my ideal target audience. Okay, but my version of reading fantasy is infinitely different than my dad's version of reading fantasy, my husband's version of reading fantasy, and all the different readers out there. So who in the fantasy genre are you targeting with that? Do you like epic fantasy, chosen one stories? Do you like complex magical worlds? Do you like action and adventure, really fast paced? What kind of, not only genre and subgenre, epic fantasy, adventure fantasy, contemporary fantasy, but also tropes are included in your story that are going to appeal to certain readers, and who are those readers? So then once you've really isolated as narrowly as possible the genre, subgenre, and tropes, then take a look at all your comps. You may already have a list of comps. If you do, that's great, but it never hurts to expand that list and see who's buying and who's reviewing those stories. So what categories are they listed in on Amazon and Barnes & Noble? Which are top selling? So you can look at the top selling list, not only obviously in the New York Times bestseller, USA Today bestseller, but also just online in general. Who's blogging about them, who's reviewing them on their Amazon listings, and then see what you can tell from those reviews. Many times they'll have details. So are they male, female? Do they read a ton? Is this their usual genre? Is this something that they tried out of the blue? There's a lot you can glean from those reviews. Even the anonymous reviews on Amazon, you can tell a lot about that reader that can inform on who that audience is and whether or not that's your target audience. But obviously that will only take you so far, because again, a lot of those are anonymous. You can't tell who Book Lover 87 is. Then the next step is to take advantage of social media. Social media is a beast of good and bad, but it is, for better and worse, a bread and butter for authors. And a lot of that is obviously connecting with your readers directly, talking about what you're writing, what you're working on, what you love and don't love. But the opposite is true as well. You can tell a lot about your target audience, who's interacting with you, who again has blogged about the books that you love or your previous books and what they liked or didn't like about them. The thing that you can tell a lot from these reviews versus the reviews on Amazon or Barnes & Noble is, where did they buy them? Did they buy it at an independent bookstore? Did they get it shipped to them? Did they find it somewhere else? Being able to tell your buying trends is really important, as well as just any other general facts about them. And I'm not talking specifically about books. Again, going back to what I said in the beginning, the business books that talk about selling go very specific. They're talking about what are their habits, what are their likes and dislikes, what do they do, what do they not do. You know, if they're reading fantasy, do they also like woodworking? If they, you know, obviously, are they into like D&D? Are they into Doctor Who? Do they read other fantasy books? Is this a one-off for them? Did they buy it from Barnes & Noble? You know, anything you can glean from their habits and likes and dislikes that then not only can inform on your story and your books moving forward, but also then can tell you, all right, well, you know what, it may not be super useful for my books to be able to get into Target, but if my books get into Walmart, that's where my books are selling. Now, granted, that's a bit more of a traditional publishing takeaway, but if you can know that your audience is buying at Target, maybe you can do an ad that is targeting towards people that are buying at a local store that is like Target or something like that. You can really use creative ways to find your audience the more you know about their habits, likes, and dislikes. So you can find all this information on social media. So we're going to call it shallow sleuthing. You don't want to stalk your readers, but you just want to find out more about them, everything you can, to be able to inform your publishing decisions moving forward. And then from all of this, putting all of it together, you want to create what I would call a character sheet for your ideal reader. So everything you can find out about them that's very, very specific. You know, my ideal reader is Susan, she's so-and-so age. We're not going to put that on here. She's, you know, married. She likes to read fantasy. She goes, you know, fishing, and that's why she likes mass markets, because she can take them with her. All of these things that you can put together that gives you sort of a profile, a general profile that then you can target, and that way you know you're specifically hitting that target audience. And then as your books obviously grow more in popularity, you can then expand that and obviously ideally reach past that as well. And it is something that you want to continuously evaluate as well. It may not be the same for every book or every series, and it may evolve as you grow as an author, but it is something you want to be able to know. That way you can make informed decisions on your book, on your series, and all of either your pitching or maybe your marketing and publishing decisions moving forward. So that's how to find your ideal target audience. I highly recommend you dive in as soon as possible to get this ideal character sheet made. It is very helpful to have in your mind whenever you're writing or working on anything for your publishing journey. I hope this has been helpful. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. I would love to hear from you. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe below. It really helps the channel. And until next time, keep writing.